Welcome to the Royal Television Society Republic of Ireland Centre panel for What Ireland is Watching. I'm Helen Doherty and I'm chairing for the RTS this evening. Now, we know that if you weren't watching this webinar this evening, you would be watching television on your screens at home. And if you're on trend, you'd be watching television on every screen at home. But if you're a viewer in Ireland watching this webinar this evening, then who are you? When you watch television, do you watch it with others? What do you watch, when? And what do we mean by television nowadays? So to approach these questions and to lead us to an understanding of what Ireland is watching, I'd like to introduce the members of the panel. We have Jill McGrath, who's the CEO of the Television Audience Measurement Ireland. We'll call that TAM Ireland. Welcome, Jill. And Lisa McNulty, Managing Director of Nielsen Media Ireland. Audrey Clark, Head of Audience Knowledge and Insights Development with Virgin Media Television. Mark Carpenter, who's Head of Strategy and Corporate Affairs at Sky Ireland. Dave Moore, the Audience Insights and Research Manager with TG4, and TG4 is the National Irish Language Public Service Broadcaster. And Paul Loughery, Head of Audience Insights with RTE, and RTE was the first established public service broadcaster in Ireland in 1961. So I suppose we have an anniversary coming up towards the end of the year that we can celebrate with you. So we're going to start with presentations and comments from the panel, followed by a short discussion, and we're aiming to close at 8 o'clock. I'll be looking at the chat panel to see what sort of questions come in for that Q&A section at the end. And I might combine, if I'm seeing questions coming in with several connected themes, I'll combine them. So Jill McGrath from TAM Ireland, it's over to you to start us off.
Thank you very much, Helen, and hopefully everybody can see my screen there. And yeah, it's lovely to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me, Helen. And I'm just going to really give you a quick oversight of how we conduct the measurement, and indeed how Nielsen do it on our behalf, and just a very broad view of viewer behavior over the last number of years and how that's changed, and a couple of what I hope you will find interesting facts from that. So just starting off with who TAM Ireland is, it's made up of all of the key stakeholders in the TV advertising industry. So that is all of the broadcasters that sell advertising in the Irish market, along with the media agencies that buy the advertising. So it's what we call a joint industry currency. And therefore that means that because of who owns TAM Ireland, there's a huge amount of transparency and accountability. And through that comes the reliability of the service. We as a service strive to produce obviously daily viewing data for TV viewing, but our ambition is to measure content across all devices and all types of content. And I'll touch a little bit on that today. But I suppose to kick off, really, let's start with two very short videos that just explain better than I ever could how exactly the measurement is conducted.
What is the TAM panel and why do we need it? TAM Ireland is responsible for delivering the Irish TV audience measurement system. This measurement system needs to provide information that all parties can trust, and so it is not for profit, owned and governed by a substantial proportion of the industry it serves, and exists to deliver consensus needs. Its independence and impartiality underpin its strength. TAM Ireland commissions contractors to provide research services, including the production of audience viewing figures on its behalf. The audience measurement contract is held by Nielsen. At the centre of our measurement system are people. The TAM Ireland panel is a sample of carefully recruited households, and together, these homes represent television viewing across the nation. We interview over 9,350 households each year as part of the Establishment Survey to give us a complete picture of TV ownership in Ireland. This helps us to recognise the types of homes we need to have on our panel. It also provides us with the information needed to accurately weight our viewing data, so they are always representative of the whole country. We can also identify from the Establishment Survey changing forms of television viewing, such as the type of device used or the use of catch-up TV services. Ultimately, the Establishment Survey helps us to find homes that are willing to be members of the panel. 1,111 homes are then selected that are representative of household type, demographics, TV platform and geography. There are over 2,500 people living in these homes, helping us to measure what you watch. How does TAM Ireland know who is watching? Having recruited a representative sample of homes, we then start to measure what people are watching and when. A meter is attached to each TV set in our panel homes. This meter can identify sources connected to the TV set, including Virgin and Sky boxes, games consoles, PVRs, etc., along with identifying specific channels. Nielsen monitors all TV sets in the home, not just the main TV set in the sitting room, but also TVs in playrooms, kitchens, bedrooms, and any other rooms. In order for us to know who is watching, all individuals in panel homes use a handset to register when they are in front of a TV set. The registration handset for TV sets looks a bit like a remote control unit. Each household member has a button labelled just for them when they press to show that they are in a room when the television is on. There are also buttons for guests to register. All participants are asked to press the button each time they enter or leave the room. Sometimes we are asked how we know that our panel members are doing what they say. Nielsen have a team of panel managers who review the data continuously, looking for anomalies that may suggest failure to register appropriately. Nielsen also undertakes spot checks, called coincidental surveys, so we can be assured that the data coming back from the meter is correct. If we see strange viewing patterns, we will investigate and, if necessary, remove the home from the panel. We also need to replace the home if it publicises that it is on the panel. Panel integrity is very important, and it is critical that we ensure confidentiality and privacy for those participating. How does
So hopefully that gave you just a brief understanding of how exactly we measure viewing. And I think it's really important to just stand back a little bit and understand that we all have an unconscious bias. People who work in the media or even who are interested in the media tend to be very different to the rest of the population. And we as humans are kind of wired to presume that whatever we do, that we're completely normal basically, and what we do, think and feel is the same as everybody else. But that just isn't true. And so it's vital to base any kind of decisions or understanding about broadcast, about TV, on hard facts rather than gut instinct, and indeed whatever your current bubble might be doing at the time. Before we look to what's happening today, I think it's quite important to look backwards and just understand what has happened over the last 15 years or so. Because back in 2008, there were 20 channels selling advertising in the Irish market. Now there are 51. Back in 2008, 5% of households had what we call in the business a PVR. So that is the ability to pause and rewind live TV. Now 61% of households can do that. And back in 2008, 62% of households had access to the internet. It wasn't broadband, it was incredibly slow, and you certainly couldn't stream much video over it. And now in 2020, 86% of households have access to broadband. And those technological changes have obviously brought with them an enormous amount of choice and have changed the market dramatically from what it was like in 2008. But what has happened to viewing, to TV viewing in particular on the TV set? Well, incredibly, really, it has remained very, very strong and has been hugely resilient to all of this change. And you can see here we've mapped viewing. So the number of minutes viewed to what we call linear TV, and what I'll just give you the definition of that is basically viewing it as the broadcaster intended, live, we call that, or within 7 days of that original broadcast. So that is our linear TV that we measure and that the currency is based on. And that has remained incredibly resilient despite all of those changes that have taken place since 2008. But of course, how we view and what devices we view on has changed. And measuring that is very challenging. We have just recently begun a rollout of the Nielsen streaming meter into 300 households, 260 of which are already on the TV panel. And this is helping us to get a better understanding of their streaming activity across all devices. I'm going to show you just a tiny bit of data from this. This is a snapshot report. We don't have the full panel rolled out yet, so I would say treat these figures with caution, but I just thought you might find it quite interesting to understand how we view video across devices. And you will see that by far the most popular device is, of course, the TV set, because that's where you get the very best quality of view. And that goes right across all of the age groups. The TV set is viewed, over 90% of all viewing is done via the TV set. But of course, on that set, you have lots of choices of broadcaster content, but also other content that's on offer from various other providers. So we have looked at total set usage, and we know that 69% of all viewing is to that linear TV, what we call total TV. So that, just as a reminder, is broadcaster TV that's viewed either live or within 7 days of the original broadcast. So it includes what we would call broadcaster video on demand, is included within that if it was with broadcast within 7 days. And other set usage, so all other activities on the set account for 31% of its usage. And that includes an enormous amount of things. So it's not just Netflix and Disney Plus. It is also gaming, all gaming on a TV set, plus use of things like YouTube and Facebook, and also broadcaster video on demand services that no doubt the broadcasters, some of them are going to talk about later, like box sets, etc., that they have in their library. So all of that goes into the other set usage, but you can see that really what Total TV provides to the country is absolutely what they want, accounting for well over 2/3 of all of their viewing activity. Putting that into context, in 2020, the average person watched 89 hours of linear TV every month, which is the equivalent of watching the whole of The Queen's Gambit on Netflix 12.5 times. So I think that gives a little bit of perspective of where viewing is at. But why is it so resilient? Why is broadcaster TV so resilient? Well, I think it's for a number of reasons. First of all, it's live and it's local. It's presenting the audience with news, current affairs, sports, entertainment and drama that is relevant to them. And we see this, Ireland is not unique to this. Throughout the world, the most popular programs within each individual country tend to be those home-produced programs that are local, and people can identify them with with them. They're part of the culture. And not only that, but it is also a communal experience. And of course, viewing is a communal experience in and of itself, because the screen tends to be in a room where there are a number of people present. But also it is the conversation point for so much beyond just within the household, especially when we're allowed out of our households to go and meet with other people. But conversation pieces are built around TV content. So it's a communal experience within the country itself. And also, really importantly, the content provided by broadcasters is easily discoverable. And this is something that you will know if you have spent hours trying to find something of interest on some of the subscription VOD services. The broadcasters know when people want to watch what they have to offer, and that's their live offering. But also beyond that, they are great at promoting what they have coming up and making it easy to find within the EPG, the Electronic Program Guide. So I've worked in media for many, many, many years, and always young people and their viewing activity has always been, or any activity of consumption of music, media, has always been questioned as, oh yes, but of course, that's for the older people, the way it's done now, but the younger people are never going to do that as time moves on. So I'm going to show you a little bit of data from a study we did back in 2018. It will be replicated with the streaming meter as it rolls out, but for now, the data I have is 2018. So it's a little bit old, but nonetheless, I think it absolutely shows what happens with viewing as we age. So here is our video day for a typical 15 to 24-year-old, and this is looking across all devices by all formats. They spend 2 hours, 40 minutes per day viewing AV content across all devices. And if you look here at the red bar, then followed by the light blue, dark blue, and dark yellow, that is broadcaster generated content available live or on demand or pay-per-view. And the lighter yellow is short form, which would be like YouTube or Facebook, and the lighter blue is subscription VOD like Netflix and Disney+. So they're consuming a lot of online video and subscription VOD, but they're also spending just about the majority of their time with broadcaster content. As they age, they watch more. So 25 to 44-year-olds watch 3 hours, almost an hour a day more than their younger counterparts. And when you think about why this might be, it's really to do with life stage. So 15 to 24-year-olds are living at home with their parents. They don't necessarily have unique access to the screen. They have to watch the main TV. They have to watch what their parents are watching. So they may spend more time on their other devices viewing. And of course, they've got quite exciting lives. They're out and about a lot. So they're not spending a huge amount of time viewing content. As they age, they move into their own house. They can't afford to go out as much. And it's also that they've got control over the main TV set as they own it. So they spend an hour per day longer viewing than their younger counterparts, but also spend far more of that time, hopefully you can see my arrow there, with broadcaster generated content, almost 2/3 of their time. And as it gets older, it adds yet another hour. So 45 plus spend 4 hours and 38 minutes viewing AV content, the vast majority of that broadcaster generated content. So I believe it's a life stage thing rather than an actual habit that they're forming younger and carrying through. It will change as their life changes and as they own their own place and get in control of their own screen. TV in itself has massive and unbeatable scale and reach. 61% of the population view in a day, 83% in a week, and 93% in a month. No other media has that level of reach and scale. And that is why it is so attractive to advertisers. And I want to just touch a little bit on advertising here, because AV, I suppose, is a mix of broadcaster offerings on the main screen, but also online video. And you hear this online video and the number of streams, and they got millions of views. And it's very hard to understand what that means in relation to viewing when you hear about the TAM ratings. So we have just converted some of our data into views as they would be interpreted by the online services like YouTube and Facebook. And the average TV campaign in Ireland gets 17.77 million views. That's each and every TV campaign. So incredible. Can you imagine putting something up on one of the online platforms and getting that kind of level of views? It will be an overnight sensation. And yet it is what the broadcasters are delivering in advertising just day in, day out. It's what they do. And of course, TV advertising is the prime real estate for advertising, with full high completion rates, viewing with the full screen and the sound on by humans, and overseen by very robust measurement that's conducted by Nielsen on behalf of TAM Ireland, making it brand safe and a shared viewing experience. But I think really what makes TV magic for people and for advertisers is the faith and trust they have in it. And during the course of the pandemic, in particular during the reopening of Ireland after the first lockdown, we conducted a series of surveys, and we ran a tracker study throughout the entire period and asked people about their trust in news and information in Ireland. And you can see here that by far TV was the most trusted medium in terms of delivering news and information. And when that's then translated into trust for advertising, they carry that forward. And so TV is by far the most trusted source of advertising, which in turn then leans on to the brands that are being advertised, who then benefit from the trust that TV has garnered with the viewing population. So that is a very quick overview of TV viewing, where it's at, how it's changing. And I really just want to finish saying that TV has been an amazingly stalwart companion for the Irish nation throughout 2020 and continuing into 2021 during this pandemic, keeping us informed, educated and entertained for almost 3 hours every day. So thank you very much for your attention, and I am now going to hand over to the Head of Insights in Virgin Media, Audrey.
Thank you, Jill. Hello, everybody. It's actually great to be here tonight to talk to people about the challenges that we're facing in Virgin Media Television, but also as an industry in capturing viewership to the growing space of broadcaster VOD. I'll start by underpinning what Jill has talked about. The TAM Ireland data is a well-respected currency. It underpins commercial revenue in this industry for the linear part of well in excess of 200 plus million euros. But as I've said, we have industry challenges. Broadcaster VOD is now starting to contribute significantly larger percentage to that total AV revenue figure that was published last year, in excess of around 250 million. So looking at my challenges as someone who is looking at insights around all of our programs and demos across all of our platforms, we have multiple data sets across linear, across live streaming, catch up, on demand across multiple platforms. We've got varying different definitions in the industry of what is deemed a view for online streaming to our players. We have differing levels of demographic data available by platform to our Virgin Media player. We have also issues around duplicated viewing. So if I consume something on catch up on my player via the set-top box, if I was in a 10-panel home, I would be counted towards the linear viewing at a program viewership level, but the broadcaster would also be counting me as a stream to that show. In terms of what we're doing to try and offset some of these challenges, we are looking at centralizing all of our different analytics for all of the different data sets around Virgin Media Player Live and Catch Up into cloud infrastructure, because the data sets are so large. This is going to allow us to do significant analysis across all of this volume of data in a real-time basis. There are possibilities to not just look at our catch-up and live streaming, there's possibilities to integrate the linear and on-demand to have all of our data together. Demographic challenges. You're not currently required to register for the Virgin Media Player to use the service, but there are some very distinct incremental advantages for those who do decide and choose to do that. They get access to downloading content for viewing later offline. There's things that they can watch on one device and then pick up later on. But as we're evolving our Virgin Media Player from a catch-up service to a streaming service, it's imperative for us to get some rich kind of demographic data around who is watching what types of content, because it allows us then to tailor our content to that audience that's coming in. When you've got a show on your player at the scale of Love Island, like last summer, 2019, Love Island delivered over 13 million streams across our player services. It's imperative as a commercial broadcaster that we're able to see the demographic data to help us maximize revenue and provide better targeted campaigns for our advertiser. Demographic data by platform, it's key for us as a broadcaster to help deliver future content strategies of placement and commissioning by platform. I guess for me in Virgin Media Television, one of the distinct advantages for me and for working in a connected entertainment company like Virgin Media, it affords us great access to a very large panel of households where we get very granular second-by-second return path data about viewing consumption, not just on a linear basis, but also from streaming via the set-top box and viewing to on-demand libraries. We work very closely with the Central Liberty Global Data Insights team, who are actually an incredible resource to us at segmenting our customer base based on viewing behavior. This has trended over time, so we can see the real shift in behavior across a large subset of customers. Our segmentation profiles of our customer base, it's as diverse and as extreme as looking at those who may be linear purists, as in they only use their set-top box to watch linear TV, right to the other end of the spectrum, where we're looking at customer behavior for those who view as an OTT first. And what I mean by that is those who only use their set-top box for streaming and access to apps. They can be up to 95% of time spent viewing on the box is to these other services. We're able to look at these segmented audience groups at not just at household level, but we can see their age, their life stages. We can segment them by content genre. We can see where we're winning and where we're losing from each of the segments. What is driving them to the OTT services? And one of the most exciting things that we're doing at the moment, and we're only dipping our toe into it at the moment, is that we're now in a position to segment audiences of our customer base, those in broadband only customers. What we're able to see is from the traffic of data going to the broadband customers, we're able to decipher who is streaming. Now, obviously with privacy issues, we're not able to see what they are streaming, but we can tell by the data the level of streaming outside of the set-top box in the home. And that's going to be an exciting world for us, because we can see the level of obviously currently we can see the level of streaming on the TV set, but now we're going to be able to see that kind of extra incremental streaming that's happening around the home. So that's kind of where our challenges are as an industry. Consistency. The one thing that TAM Ireland provides is a one single source consistent data set. But at the moment, our broadcaster VOD service is very much the data is controlled by the broadcasters. There's no independent verified source until the streaming meter and Tam Nielsen are in a position to bring this into the currency. We're currently operating in silos. That's kind of it for me. I'll pass you on to Mark.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Jill. So I suppose just to, by way of introduction, I must apologise. My presentation might not be quite as analytically deep as either Audrey or Jill's, but hopefully you'll find it interesting nonetheless. What I'm going to do is just take you through briefly a little bit about sort of what sort of viewership on Sky looked like in 2020, and then if people have any questions from a measurement perspective or from any other perspective, happy to take them at the end. Helen, are you okay for the slides? Okay. So just in terms of sort of what viewing looked like in 2020, and thank you to Jill and Lisa and her colleagues. All of this data is obviously is from TAM. And if I was to call out sort of just, I suppose, one thing for the year, which I think is particularly interesting, is sort of the uptick in viewing of entertainment and comedy programming. You know, and that's, I suppose, perhaps unsurprising in a world, you know, where people wanted a bit of escapism, considering everything we were going through in 2020. You know, an opportunity to laugh during what has been a quite difficult year for people. And to that end, what we saw in particular was increased viewing to Sky One and Sky Comedy, which we launched at the start of 2020 and proved very popular last year. We're calling out as well, I suppose, that we launched sort of 3 other channels in 2020. Sky Crime, a true crime channel, Sky Nature, which is all about sort of exploring the beauty and wonder of the natural world, and Sky Documentaries, as with the clue there is sort of in the title in terms of what that is. And that hosts sort of both original documentaries and productions from the likes of HBO and Showtime. So obviously they were all launched in 2020, so I can't show year-on-year figures for them, but what I can say already is if you compare sort of viewership to them to sort of their genre competitors, so we're very happy to sort of how they're doing so far. They're proving pretty popular, and obviously hope that sort of continues to increase in 2021. If I just flick on one more, hopefully you should see the highlight slide now. Is that okay? Sorry, apologies. We're into Plan B on the slide share format here. So just a couple of things to call out, and I think they're all interesting. So I suppose on the sports side for us, you know, from a business perspective, we obviously all had our hands, you know, in our mouths a bit, you know, when the sporting world came to a halt in March and April. You know, if you think of Sky, you probably think of sports first. But I suppose what's been interesting and sort of encouraging from our perspective is the extent to which viewers have come back since sports started again. I mean, obviously, you know, we've been talking a bit about sort of linear and on-demand. You know, sports is the, you know, sports and news, obviously, but for us, particularly sports is the linear experience. So, you know, it's been great that we have had, you know, record Premier League audiences. I have up there the record audience for 2020, which was Everton and Liverpool. But interesting, a couple of weeks ago, Liverpool versus Man United actually broke that record. For those of you who are watching, apologies, it wasn't the most exciting game you might have ever seen. But, you know, on one hand, you might think it's obvious that, you know, with diminished options that we currently face, that more people are watching sports. But actually, if you look at sort of the US figures and the figures that Nielsen and the like are putting in the US, actually you see that viewership to sports has declined in the last year over there. So it's not necessarily a given that sort of we would continue to see the uptick that we've taken, even with the sort of the obvious fact that perhaps people have fewer competition and fewer options with how they spend their free time at the moment. So one other thing to call out is, you know, Sky News, which had a big year. I'm sure all of my colleagues on the call, in Virgin Media, RT and TG4 have seen similar numbers for their news programming in the year that's been. Obviously for us, COVID coverage has been big. We were on the ground in Bergamo at the epicenter of the first wave, which was obviously pretty harrowing, but pretty important viewing. And actually, one thing I thought was interesting was that the US election led to such a spike in viewing. So not everyone was watching on CNN. And if I was to go into a slight tangent as well, and to come back to a point that Jill made about trust in her presentation, I do think it's interesting if you were during the US election in particular, but more generally, if you flick between Sky News or RT or VM for that matter, and onto CNN or Fox, just the difference in terms of what's fair and balanced, and what the different regulatory imperative here. I think the reason why Sky News, RT News, VM News, and TG4 are so respected is because of that fair and balanced approach that you take as a given, which maybe isn't always the case in, say, some of the US news output you might also consume. And then finally, just on our flagship channel, Sky Atlantic, the biggest hit for us was Gangs of London, and interestingly, it was the biggest hit both in terms of linear TX and in an on-demand world. So it had the biggest linear on-demand, had the biggest linear viewing, and it also was our most downloaded show in 2020. So sometimes people think of trade-offs between those two things, but interestingly, we found for Gangs that actually they went hand in hand. And I suppose one other thing to call out on, if I'm talking about Atlantic, it just occurs to me is, it was The Undoing towards the end of the year, which also I think was possibly number 2 most watched program of the year. And one thing we did with The Undoing, and we've done it with Succession in the past, is this idea again of, even though it does a lot of on-demand viewing, we don't release the box at all up front. We have the day and date, one show a week dropping at a specific time, and that does create the buzz around that show, and people are tuning in at 8 o'clock on a Monday or 7 o'clock on a Monday, and then it's generating those conversations. I was going to say water cooler conversations, Microsoft Teams or Zoom's conversations as they are now the next day, in the office of, did you see it last night? Who do you think did it, etc., etc. So it is interesting how that type of viewing experience really does, still, reach the forefront of people's minds. And then just on my final slide, I thought one other interesting call out was in terms of box set consumption, how much there has been, notwithstanding that Gangs was the number 1 most downloaded show, but how much was older box sets, how popular they were this year. And I think the explanation to that is probably similar for the explanation for the uptake in entertainment and comedy, and that understandable desire for escapism, the familiar. I think for some people it meant they had time this year to get around to watching something they'd always meant to watch but never quite got around to it. I know for me, I'm currently watching Parks and Recreation. I'd never got around to watching it previously. I'm watching it now. And for some, it's more, I just want to watch Sex and the City again, or I just want to watch something again. It's familiar, it's comfortable. I know I'm going to laugh. I know what I'm getting. And there's something I think to be said for that in the year that's in it. So that's all from me. I'm gonna hand over to Dave now, and look forward to any questions you might have later.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Mark. I'm just glad to know that hopefully that the one big technical hitch was out the way before it got to me, and then I stumbled over my share. So I guess we'll see how we go. Thanks also to Helen and to the RTS for the invitation. Very much appreciate both on behalf of myself and of TG4. And for those of you who are maybe from outside Ireland or from outside this market, just take a couple of minutes to just give a little bit of background on TG4 itself. We're the Irish language broadcaster in Ireland, set up as Television Gaeilge in 1996 and became TG4 in 1999. Our mission is to promote the Irish language and culture, both in Ireland and all over the world, through the TG4 channel and through our player and through our online hubs. So we are the world's Irish language broadcaster. We take that very seriously because our diaspora is everywhere. There's Irish speakers all over the world, and it's really is our responsibility to make sure that they have that connection with the language and with the culture and with home. Channel residence in Ireland, where are we? Where is TG4 in the mix of the whole things on a national basis? Right, so just put this pyramid together yesterday, and what I was doing is, and very proud of TG4's place in it. My 7-year-old daughter came in, looked at it, asked me what it was. I explained it. She goes, "Daddy, but why is nobody watching TG4?" Which I thought was very harsh indeed. So just to explain, RT1 has had a magnificent year in 2020, and generally would be 15+%, but actually would have cleared 20% last year. Paul Lockery, the head of Insights in RT, will be on after me, and I'm sure he'll be explaining that. You know, the effect of COVID on viewing in Ireland in 2020 and on overall, I'm sure was massive. You know, the public service element that both ourselves and RT, and also the news services provided in Ireland by Virgin and by Sky as well, benefited massively from that. And just the responsibility that we had to just to inform everybody is what was going on. Version 1 will be in the second band, RT2, BBC 1, and Version 2 will be in the third. And then TG4 sits proudly at the top of that particular band of broadcasters in the next tier, in the fourth tier down. We have a share of just below 2% of national viewing here, which was primarily an Irish language broadcaster, is something we're very proud of. And having that resonance in that tier of broadcasters alongside the likes of BBC 2, 3, Virgin 3, Sky 1, Sky News, Channel 4, and this year RT 1+1, which is just rubbing it in really, and just to steer clear of the digital jungle. That's certainly not a disrespectful term at all to any of the smaller digital broadcasters. You know, it's a good analogy to think of not wanting to be relegated into the championship that's going to digital jungle, because it's hugely competitive. Being able to stay with a reach and with a resonance which is high enough to preserve our status as a broadcaster in that tier is very important to us and very important to TG4. Now, we have twin poles because, as I say, we're Irish language, but we also have the responsibility and the wherewithal to need to stay prominent as a national broadcaster as well. So even in our title, in our broadcast title, it's the twin poles is evident. The TG element will be the television Gaeilge, which will be the television to the Irish language, which we were set up in 1996. And the CAR, when we changed in 1999, we would be the fourth national broadcaster. There's a few others come through since, but that's where we were at the time. So from a measurement side, it's very important that we actually have two separate measurement services as well, because we have our core audience of Irish speakers, and we have our national audience. Now, the national, as Jill had explained, and all of the other speakers have explained very well about Tamine and Nielsen figures, and how powerful they are, and what a great currency it is. And that's how we measure ourselves nationally. The core audience naturally would have been something that we would have had to develop ourselves. And with the National University of Ireland, Galway, we developed the Fisfisha concept, which is a 500 panel of fluent Irish speakers who get a questionnaire every week and will give us great feedback on how our programming is doing with the Irish language audience. So just to go a bit deeper into that, Fisfisha was established in 2013 by ourselves and by NUI Galway, with a panel of 500 fluent Irish speakers. It's all Ireland, 32 county panel, representative of the centres in both territories. There's a weekly questionnaire that online that the panelists receive on a Monday. They would receive questions and just a viewing diary, if you like, through the Irish language programs that we broadcast in prime time, and also for our kids programs as well. Measures viewing of TG4 on all platforms, so it's a cross-platform reach, and it also measures viewing to our online hubs, which will be Multiscale and Block, which we provide a lot of material online for as well. RT's Irish language radio service, RT Radio na Gaeltacht, has also become a part of the Fisfisha service since 2018, and they also receive weekly figures from it as well. So what is the most popular with the TG4 core audience? Our news would typically get 80% reach with amongst Fisfisha with our Irish language panel. Ross Naroon is our soap for those of you outside the territory. and it just gives a resonance with the Irish language audience of what you would expect from Coronation Street or from EastEnders or from the other big soaps with a national context. Original music programs, particularly traditional Irish music programs and documentaries are massive, and it's a very important thing for us in TG4. What we provide, like I say, not only in Ireland but all over the world. We're well known for our documentaries and also for our traditional music programs as well, and sports. And what sports does for us, both actually, it's very popular for us, both in terms of our core audience and in the national audience. And as you'll see in a second, it's extremely important for us nationally. If we look at the top programs for 2020, for amongst Tam Island Nielsen in terms of national, as you can see, it's dominated by live GAA and also by the TG4 Ladies Football Championship final. And there's one extra program in there, which was a program live concert of the Dubliners that we had, well, recorded as live on broadcast on Christmas Day, which was extremely popular. So, and I guess the reason why live sport is so important for us nationally is, I mean, all those programs are with our Irish language commentary, but you know, it really is such a visual type of a program and a media that it lends itself very well. It really isn't any barrier whatsoever, whether if your Irish language fluency isn't as good, you know, you can still watch the matches, no problem. And we have underneath the All Ireland Championships, we would have then, I would argue, I think the next two most important championships, one of which being the National League and one being the AIB Club Championships, and they really have been massive for us over the last 20 years or so. Now, amongst this feature with the core audience, you know, barrier to viewing by genre, by language, isn't there at all. So, I mean, these are actual programs outside of news, because news, you know, will be the top of our list for this feature every week. But there's a big range of programming here amongst this documentaries looking at the future of the Irish language speaking areas in the Gaeltacht. There are matches. There's also entertainment programs and music programs. The Fleadh Cheoil was a victim of COVID this year, but we put on special programming in the week where the Fleadh Cheoil would have been taking place in August, and that was extremely popular. And then bringing it up, which kind of says about the level of diversity we have in our schedule. We're extremely proud of our Tour de France coverage, which we cover in the Irish language every year, and it's extremely popular with our panelists and gets extremely good viewing as well. So when you look at core versus national, the ability that we have with both our viewing measurements, either from TAM or from this feature, is it enables us really to look at performance of programming on both levels. For instance, with Irish language fluency being not widespread within the whole population, it puts our news and current affairs, which will be live on subtitles, potentially at a disadvantage with regards to getting high audience figures with the Tam Nielsen panel, because unless you had a good level of fluency with Irish, you'd find it reasonably difficult to follow. But it does extremely well with the core audience. So we plot our programming and our genres onto a graph like this, where we know, I mean, ideally everything will be in the top right-hand corner, and we'll do extremely well with both. There will be reasons, as I said, in terms of fluency, where programs or genres might appear in the bottom right-hand quadrant, and also the top left. Things will be good nationally, but lowish for core audience. If it's in that blue quadrant, then you know, it leaves us with a decision to make as a broadcaster, that either through scheduling or for content, or for some reason it's missed its mark, and we'd have to look and see what we could do about it. So really, I've just plotted the actual genres here, just to give you an idea as to how that would fall. News and current affairs does extremely well with our core audience, finds it hard to get an audience nationally. Drama would also be that way, and that's something where it's extremely popular with our core audience. This would be our own home-produced drama now in the Irish language. Finds it harder to get a national audience, but you know, partly maybe some of the subtleties could have been lost with subtitles. it's you know, we've done a bit of research on it. We'll do a lot more, and we'll get to the bottom of that. As you can see with sports, very good national figures, and music also. And then with the documentaries and with the entertainment programming, which will be, you see it there. The reason that kind of falls neutrally around the middle is because there will be a lot of analysis done on programs which would be either new programs and also repeated from different times a year. And there'll be a pull where I suppose you could say that they're probably doing quite well for both, which is why they gravitate towards the middle. For performance in 2020, yeah, there was a massive effect in the spring with when the first lockdown came in, and we really did get substantial increases to viewing on our player, and that's held up throughout the year in 2020. We've had a player in TG4 since 2003, partly because of the responsibility that we've always had to bring Irish language programming all over the world. And we had a golden spider as long ago as 15 years ago, so we've always taken our player very seriously. Streams of RTE player also carry a lot of our program, which is great and gives us a lot of exposure as well. Cúlachar is our children's service, and with the RTE also would have put a lot of emphasis into the homeschool hub, and actually are at the moment as well, of course. But our streams for Cúlachar player increased substantially last year as well. Now, because of that, and it's also topical at the moment with a lot of us doing homeschooling at the moment, we noticed that an awful lot while children were in school, that there would have been a lot of viewing through desktop viewing that was coming prevalent to us in terms of our streams data. So it really did bring to mind that TG4 has been used substantially within classrooms in primary schools, and we wanted to try and interrogate that the best we can, and to find out what was going on. So we commissioned Red Sea, one of the top research agencies here, to do research for us and to try and get to grips with how teachers are using our material, what they think of it, and also to get a handle on how many schools are actually viewing our content around the country. So really, when you look at the purpose of video content, teachers are very much looking upon it in 3 different ways, to either enrich their own understanding on particular things, to engage with the pupils and the students in the classrooms, and also just to shake it up a bit, to diversify what they were doing within the classroom. And we got some extremely popular and positive information coming back. There's one particular teacher, they use pre-watched episodes from one of our technology programs for a science lesson all the time, to get useful phrases in Irish to learn as well. So I mean, we're doing the second half of that particular research is a survey that's going on at the moment, waiting for we have top line figures which suggest that 40% of all schools in primary schools are actually using our material on a regular basis within the classroom itself, and that's huge for us. I mean, for us to be, first of all, to trust us that much with the output that we have, and also it just helps children also realise, particularly if they're learning Irish in areas where Irish isn't actually a first language or fluent language around them, that Irish is fun. It's used in entertainment programs and cartoons. It's not just about education. It's not just about school. And anything that we can do with that really does help us with the next generation, just to put forward Irish in a good light. So yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you very much to everybody, and I'll hand over to Paul Lockery now, and I hope he'll realise that I said lots of nice things about his channel and that he won't put the boot on me too. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Dave. I'll just share my screen. Yeah, so RTE is Ireland's national broadcaster. At this stage, I really should say thanks to everybody who came before me tonight, because they pretty much said everything I'm about to say. In particular, Dave, he highlighted how great we are, so I don't need to do too much of that. I'll just go ahead here. Hang on. Right, there we go. Look, I mean, the first thing is trust. I think in data is key in this day and age. That's why TAM is so reliable, and we're so relying on them and Nielsen to provide an independent source of information. Is so important to us. So essentially, we're not marking our own homework. It's an independent source, and allows us as a broadcaster to understand who's watching our programs, who's engaged with our content, and making sure it's relevant across all audiences. Also, I think what's key to this is content on TV was made long before measurement came along as well. So it's important to know that people who make content know what they're doing. And what we're here, in my opinion, to do is help them become even more relevant, more entertaining, more informative. And all the information we get helps with that as well. So it's important that they trust us and what we're showing them in terms of insight analysis as well. My presentation, I'm just going to use last year and this year as well to try and understand and illustrate how we go about trying to understand our audience. The whole year was a year of upheaval, understanding people as they progress through this journey. And we did quite a lot of research trying to understand needs and moods. Mainly myself, my team did a lot of work, but mainly my team did a lot of work trying to understand this. And at some stages when we would do research and we were about to publish it, and we would go, everything's changed again. And the consumer has changed. It was almost like we were saying the stages of grief. So initially people were, they didn't really believe this was happening. And this would turn to anger and disbelief and all those kind of things. Why we try to understand that is to help our content makers understand the mood of the nation so that they can adapt accordingly. And so it was a strange year from that perspective. Saying that, people want other pieces of content as well. This is the top 20 programs in Ireland last year. The number one program is typically be the number one program, and the range of programs you're seeing here are the most watched programs, and it gives you an idea of the big events that people come into in Ireland. For those who are not familiar with these programs, the Late Late Toy Show, this is the biggest viewership ever that we've had for this on TV, and then we have player numbers as well. It's essentially a grown middle-aged man playing with toys and singing with children, and the whole nation sits down and watches it. We continue to do it every year after year, and it continues to do those numbers. But you can see, look, there's a wide range of programs that people choose to watch. Chat shows, live sport across ourselves, across Virgin Media. You also have entertainment programs in there as well, current affairs, and nostalgia at number 15 in terms of reading in the year, and celebrity on Virgin Media. And then entertainment as well, and lifestyle in terms of DIY SOS, which is a relatively new program, family program on a Sunday. But really, what a few people already mentioned this. News was the big star of 2020. People really wanted information across all broadcasters, and they came to TV for that. And the reason for that is trust. And why do we know that? Is because we ask the audience. They want to see trusted information, and they want to see it from trusted sources. So our own research, which we did, all the guys mentioned this as well in terms of local research companies. We did this with behavior and attitudes, asking people about sources used to get news and information. It's by far the most is TV, and after that it's website and apps, which is not social media. Social media is coming last on this. So it's really I was at a presentation yesterday asking the question, is fake news gone? No, I don't think it is. I think news will be news. But I think people will still come to those trusted sources, as in TV. We also, from our own perspective, just trying to understand where we sit in terms of local news and non-TV news, and we were far ahead of other competitors in this market. So people would come to us and newspapers. Interesting to see that the international social media companies dropped during this period in terms of trusts around them as well. So I suppose one of the things that we need to do going into the future is ensure that our content is wherever, whenever people want that. So we would serve that content through our player, and we've really seen that what people watch on TV is what they watch on the extension of TV, which is essentially players. But what the player allows them to do is watch it whenever they want. We've seen extraordinary numbers again throughout the year in programs like Normal People, traditional soaps like Home and Away, and news programs. But the one thing about this is the key challenge, and I think a few people acknowledge this as well. The big challenge is to try and bring those two currencies together. So we really don't know who's behind the mobile phone. We know that this content has been watched on a device. And that's where the broadband panel will come into it. We put demographics across this, and this information will become even more valuable. I think, as Audrey said, it will allow us as well to have a gold standard that we can work off and try and understand our own data sets. But that is the big challenge of trying to understand this particular audience. And we've done quite a lot of work as well to try and understand the audiences outside of TV. One of the key ways we do this is the old traditional segmentations. So not everybody's the same, obviously. Up till now as well, we've always talked about age, sex, social class. But through research, we know it's a lot to do with life stage as well. So a 35-year-old person who has a young child will behave completely different than the 35-year-old person who has no dependent within the household, and the media behavior reflects that as well. Because if you have a child, you have less time, and you may be more likely to go on to a player when you have time to consume content. Whereas if you don't have those ties, you might choose to watch content on TV when it's live, if you have the time. Why do we do this in terms around the player is to understand that audience. I'm far beyond these young audiences that we're all talking about. I might pretend to know about them, but research really backs up some of the stuff that I don't know and some stuff that I do know. So, for example, for our player, when we did the segmentation, we picked out the younger audiences on there, or the less dependent, or those who have less dependence. We started building content around them to bring them to our player. So we came up with a strategy of premium content for Irish people under 45 to stream and enjoy on RT's channels. So what happened as a result of that? So we've produced a wide range of content which you wouldn't necessarily see on TV. It may not attract those big broadcast audiences, but on a player they were fairly successful. So in 2020, we delivered 16 new video formats, 15 new faces and voices, which is really important for RT to bring that new talent forward. And 4 new female writers, 7 new podcasts, and we help develop new production companies as well. All that falls under our remit and understanding audiences. So really, that's a quick few minutes for me just to try and understand how we're looking at audiences, what we're doing with audiences. We could, I say, all of us could sit here all night and talk about all the other services and research and measurements we use, but ultimately at the moment, the core understanding of how people consume TV would really happen through TAM Ireland, and going into the future, it will be TAM Ireland plus broadband panel and understanding all total video as a whole. So that's it for me. I'll just stop sharing my screen and go back to everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Paul, I think you rounded up a number of the important points as well as presenting on behalf of RTE Insights. Mentioned catching up with streaming and what's happening with audiences on different screens. Another comment, it was from Audrey, in terms of capturing real-time viewing and how producers can respond to that in real time also within programs. And something else that was mentioned also that I think is important is if we're depending on the statistics from the past, even the recent past, how do we break new voices and bring new people into production into the future so that we get that refreshing of new voices and new input and so on. So there are a few of the queries. We will start to get questions coming in from on the chat function, but in the meantime, does anybody want to respond to how the real-time analysis might affect broadcast production or what we see or program content?
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify around the real-time analytics. So it won't refer to linear. It's more, when I say real-time, it's probably more closer aligned to 2 hours, within a 2-hour window of live streaming or catch up. It will help inform it will help inform decisions for the next day. It will help us to decipher at what point we lost the viewer in the stream. You know, do we need to look at break patterns in live content when we're looking at maybe sporting events for the live player? I wasn't trying to mislead anybody by saying real time is making assumption that it was there and then. It would be within a 2-hour window, whereas currently I would receive my analytics for all of my players the next day. Whereas if something transmits at 1 o'clock in the day, I would have real-time information within a 2-hour window. That would, I guess, in an ideal world, if you had real-time information around a linear, if you had a live current affairs show, you know, like the Tonight Show on Virgin Media One, there's my sales plug, you could, if you saw there was a big drop off in viewers with a certain panelist, you could react to that. Or if you could see that viewers were really engaging in a segment, you could maybe delay a commercial break. These would be in an ideal world to have real-time information for your linear broadcast. I think we're a long time away from that, but it would inform editorial decisions in live content.
I'd be interested to see Lisa and her team working 24 hours a day, producing real-time ratings.
Well, thankfully, working for a connected entertainment company like Virgin Media Television, I would hope that that's not too far away in the distant world.
Yes, it's a technology that's in development. And Jill, the real-time, the streaming meter you mentioned on your presentation, now that really is an interesting innovation. Can you tell us something more about that? I know you could only say something small in your presentation, but how do you think that will be developing over the next few months or years?
So we're working obviously really closely with Lisa in building the panel out at the moment. Everyone who joins that panel has to commit to having all of the devices in the home included in the measurement. So that in and of itself is a challenge that Nielsen are standing up to and taking. But yeah, the panel size itself will be 300 households and 260 of those will be from the existing TV panel. So the original plan was to have that fully in place by May 2021. Obviously, for the last year, Nielsen have been hugely hampered by the pandemic in that the engineers haven't been able to get out to the houses to install the meters. So there's definitely a lag in that. But what it will be able to do is, I suppose, give us a much better understanding of viewing behavior and how the devices are used, but also how formats are used. And when I say formats, I mean the broadcaster players and also the subscription VOD services. So it will just give us a much deeper understanding of viewing behavior, and crucially, I think, for all of the broadcasters, because of course they do have great data internally on consumption, but this will give us demographic data. And that really is I suppose, the huge value in this. So we understand not just how much content is being consumed and what content that is, but by whom. And that, I think, is the magic of the streaming meter data that we'll be getting. Lisa, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you've summarized it very eloquently there, Jill. Thank you for that. I mean, I think the most important thing about having our streaming meter, which works alongside our traditional meter, which measures the TV set, is that it is a single source panel. So we're measuring, rather than measuring the device, we're measuring, I suppose, what the people in the household are doing. So we can understand, we all know instinctively ourselves, we sit down in front of the TV set, but we're not always just looking at the TV set. You might be doing something on your phone at the same time. So this also, having a single source panel, allows us to understand the duplication of device usage within the household as well. So really what the streaming meter does is it measures activity on connected TV sets and smart TV sets and digital devices, as Jill said, within the household. It's exciting new territory for Nielsen. I think it's certainly new territory for all of us. But as Jill mentioned in her presentation, as viewing evolves and changes, obviously our measurement solutions have to adapt to match that.
That's good to know. Thanks for the update. There are a couple of questions coming in on the chat. One is, can anyone share any insights into children's viewership, that is under 15-year-old? And Dave, there's a specific question for you. Do you have any data on the difference between TG4 viewing inside and outside the Gaeltacht areas in Ireland? Inside the Gaeltacht areas and outside in Ireland?
It's a very good question. Through our Fisvisha panel, we measure. We have a regional breaks where we talk about Gaeltacht outside the Gaeltacht, and also for Northern Ireland as well, for the 6 counties as separate. And I suppose, like anything, taking into consideration that everybody on that panel is a fluent Irish speaker to start with, it tends to go with different types of programming or program genres as for the differences. There was 1 or 2 programs I had at the top of my list there about, particular documentaries about the future of the Gaeltacht, and naturally they would have come up very, very high in Gaeltacht areas. And then news would also be particularly high. So yeah, it is. It can go either genre-based or program-based between Gaeltacht and others. I suppose from looking at the raw viewing, if you like, from the Tam Nielsen side of things, it's difficult because the Gaeltacht is, has a population of probably less than, in terms of Irish speakers, maybe 100,000 people thereabouts. It's difficult for Nielsen's to do a representative panel around those particular types of numbers. So we wouldn't have thousands of figures or TAM ratings that I could give you for a Gaeltacht area split out on their own, and that's totally understandably, which is one of the reasons why Fisvisha is so important to us, with the feedback we get from that. So yeah, I hope that helps. That's a good question.
Great. Yeah. You can probably see the questions in the chat there. There's one on broadcast video on demand. Is it easier or more worthwhile to bring broadcast video on demand viewers to linear TV? Or is it more worthwhile to try to transfer them from Netflix and so on to the players? That's probably a bit condensed, that question.
I'm going to have a stab at that, and just to have an understanding, and Jill might back me up on this, is that believe it or not, that the vast majority of people still come to scheduled linear TV for their video needs. And that's not me saying that, that's the independent research company, Nielsen, saying that. So then you obviously have, Netflix and those Prime Video. They're growing off a small base, but they're growing quite rapidly. But they're nowhere near the live TV that you would get. But on saying that they provide a different service as well. They have international content makers or international budgets for essentially the rest of the world, so people can watch this similar type of content anywhere. I think where we're fortunate is we make local content that people within Ireland want to watch, and even our own research as well, which we did independently, where asking people, how do you choose to watch a program? First thing is an appointment to view. They know in their head what they want to watch. It could be Coronation Street, it could be Fair City, it could be Dave Soap, whose name I've forgotten, and if there's any soaps on Sky, it could be that too. So, but and then they flick through the EPG. And then after that, that's when they started going to other sources, maybe their PVR or Netflix, to see if there's anything there, or their boxes. So it is an area that we keep an eye on. It is rapid growth, but the majority, I'd say Netflix are looking to take our audience as opposed to us taking them.
If I could jump in there, Helen, firstly, I suppose to reiterate a lot of what Paul said. So if you think from a Sky perspective, and just maybe thinking about us as a platform as opposed to a broadcaster, just for the purposes of this answer, even with sort of the wealth of choices on the Sky platform, the number one use case in terms of what a customer does when they turn on the box is they go to a TV guide, they go into a linear EPG, and they choose one of the first channels. That is still the most common thing, I suppose, that people do, even in a Sky world whereby you have access to sort of a lot of other content as well. And I suppose from our perspective, what we're trying to offer is sort of a one-stop shop. That the marketing tagline is all in one place, but that's effectively, it's a one-stop shop whereby one remote, okay, you want to watch the 6-1, there you go. You want to watch an on-demand piece of content from Virgin Media, off you go. You want to record something from TG4 and store it there, so it's convenient for you to have, off you go. You want to actually go and watch Netflix, that's fine. That can all be achieved as well with a couple of clicks. And I suppose, in an ideal world, what you want there is a sort of a positive feedback loop, in that people like that convenience and they stay longer in the system. And if they're longer in the system, they're more likely to be watching, all of the above, as opposed to sort of, okay, I've got to go somewhere else to get into Netflix, and then I'm in Netflix and it's a hassle to get back to linear TV, so I won't bother, or vice versa. If you're trying to give options to people, but at the same time, in an ideal world, as I said, it's sort of positively reinforcing, and that it makes everybody's content easier to get to, depending on what that person wants at any particular point in time. While at the same time, the most common behavior still being TV guide, linear EPG, what's on now. And and to answer the kids' question, I can say that kids viewing on Sky was very significantly up in 2020, which is perhaps not surprising with school closures, etc. So our own kids' content, Sky Kids content, is actually, it lives in an on-demand world. We don't actually have a linear channel as such. But if you look at the download data, very, very significantly up in 2020.
I'm just going to jump in on the BVOD thing as well. In Virgin Media Television, we wouldn't see a situation where we would view our broadcaster VOD player, Virgin Media player, as competition to our linear. We see it as incremental viewing to our linear channels. And with regards to Netflix and Amazon Prime, absolutely, we are out to target their viewers. They've had quite a head start in terms of providing streaming services, but where broadcaster VOD will excel and advertiser funded VOD is going to accelerate over the next number of years, is providing all of this diverse content, as Paul mentioned, acquired content maybe from the US or the UK to our players. It's going to act as a competition. There is a tide of change happening in the world where people who subscribe to subscription services are now also heavy consumers of advertiser funded VOD. So we say we welcome viewers across all of our platforms, wherever that the views are to our content, and we are actively, aggressively targeting Netflix and Amazon paying customers to come back to our free advertiser funded content.
A question that has been asked there that we haven't mentioned is, given that people across all the counties of Ireland can see all of these stations, are you taking into account the 6 counties as well as the Republic of Ireland viewing?
So I can maybe just mention that from the TAM Ireland measurement side, they're not included in our measurement. They are included, however, within the UK measurement system. So in the UK, there is a similar organisation to TAM Ireland, which is called BARB, and Northern Ireland would fall under that measurement. So they're not included in the figures that we and TAM Ireland release here.
And are you seeing the same sorts of patterns? Jill very effectively summarised the reasons why people like watching Irish television in the Republic of Ireland, the community, the local, and the communal aspect of it. Are you, from what you can see from the BARB figures for Northern Ireland as part of the UK, do you see those sorts of patterns reflected? Or is it, are you not given those insights just yet?
Unfortunately, we don't have access to those insights. You know, we can only, we've inquired many times down the years because, you know, we have quite, I mean, tomorrow we're doing a presentation to production companies who are funded by the Irish Language Broadcasting Fund in the 6 counties. So quite an amount of our original Irish language programming does actually come from the 6 counties. And we're conscious of the fact that we're by nature of the Good Friday Agreement, both ourselves and RTE are must carry in the 6 counties as well. And indeed, all Irish broadcasters are carried extensively on the different platforms in the north. So it'll be interesting to all of us. Unfortunately, cost is a barrier. Every time we try and we dip the toes in and see how much it would cost to get a subscription in the 6 counties, it costs us nearly as much to get data from the 6 counties as it does from the 26, and that's it's been prohibitive for us anyway, unfortunately, in time. But you know, I'd have another look again.
We subscribed many years ago, and the world has changed since then. But it's interesting, a few insights from it. Republic of Ireland playing a match, the numbers were quite high in the north. But things like the winning streak and lotto were all quite high. We can only guess that they were quite high around the border counties. I come from Derry, and from I just know that people travel across, buy their lotto tickets and check out RT on the Saturday night to see what the numbers were. But they also watch stuff that they don't get. You know, again, it's local content that would be made down here. And back then, even for example, Fair City would have been quite big up north, but other programs like news wasn't that big because it wasn't that relevant up there at the time. So they're just a few insights. We don't subscribe anymore. We don't, as Dave said, the cost is prohibitive.
And on a different theme, one of the people writing in said, is there a breakdown of viewing of repeat programs by broadcaster against the first transmission and repeats?
Yeah, within our data, we do split the programs all individually. So it is possible to look at original transmissions versus repeats for any particular program. I mean, the guys here can talk about different patterns. I think it depends really on the program. And when they're both scheduled, the lift would be different by genre and by program.
Yeah, we used to find, and I'm sure it's the same, Audrey, in terms of what we would call lifestyle programs or home improvement programs really repeat well. So a certain portion of the audience see it the first time, and you can imagine if it's repeated in the afternoon. It's one of those programs you don't have to have followed previously. You can be there to catch up straight away and watch it. You get to watch it for the first time because you may not have seen it the first time, but also you could catch up because it's a different experience.
Yeah, I would completely underpin that, what Paul has said. We have things like Gogglebox Ireland and the Guards Inside the K, which would have repeated at late night at the weekend. Very different audience sometimes to who's available in the 8 or 9 p.m. slot. And we often see very strong return in different slots.
We've just got a few minutes to go in this interesting conversation, but one of the questions which is very general, and perhaps you could all think about it, is with the increase in streaming, has it affected the scheduling? Or is it just that people stream whenever they want to?
If I could say just one thing on that, just to come back to sort of the presentation, sort of a point I made there, and that, you know, maybe scheduling because of our sort of commercial model is slightly less important as, you know, primarily subscription business versus maybe advertising funding, although, you know, obviously it is still important. But I do think one of the interesting things is those big shows, when you do find the right slot for it in the week, and you do actually just you release one show at a time, as opposed to sort of the box set model of everything goes up at one time. That is something that I know our team spend a lot of time thinking about, as in what's the right show for it. Is it right to do it on series 1? Is it right to do it on series 2? Sometimes you might do it on series 1, not series 2. Sometimes you might do the inverse. And then what exactly is the right slot? So, you know, I think doing was a Monday evening Succession, which was the one I really enjoyed. I can't remember if it was Monday evening as well. Dairy Girls, I remember, did it on Thursday evening on Channel 4. And what you do is, you know, it is important because it creates that sort of, I know it's a buzzword, but talkability, and that is very, very important. So I think even in a world where, you know, you might not be thinking of scheduling as much as you were previously, it's still really, really important for that buzz and that talkability around your key shows, you know, to get people talking about them. So for us, that's where it's so central.
I think as well, there was a big piece of research done a number of years ago by the BBC, trying to understand this, and people want to feel part of the community or part of what's going on or part of the big event. It's being part of society. So when you have a scheduled piece of content, especially the big events, and it's not just sport, it's other events, people want to feel part of what's going on, so they come together, even if they're alone at home. It's still so important that we can carry on doing that.
And one of the important things about television in Ireland that perhaps we don't always recognise is that all of our television channels depend on advertising for income at some level or another. And therefore, measuring the audience is an extremely important skill that Jill, you've presented your and Lisa's work and your team's work to us. And each one of you in the broadcast companies has supplementary ways of measuring the audiences as well. And I'd like to finish with the question that I started with, and that is that important as audience measurement is, there is a danger that we would want to repeat the past rather than breaking some of those patterns and bring in new voices and so on. Paul mentioned this a little bit. But bearing in mind that we have students, for example, master's students in broadcast production, I know, watching this evening, how do you think they will find, if they feel that they have a new voice to bring to broadcast production, where would they find the ways into bringing their programming content to any of the stations?
I think I'll jump in there again. Sorry, it's more what we can do. We did some work there recently, trying to understand youth and young people, and a lot of people can make their own content now, probably better than we can. But where we can help is help them tell stories. You know, our content makers are excellent at telling stories, and that's where the skill is. So, you know, there's an opportunity to work together for that. So that's, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, I think that's one angle of approach. And I know that some television organizations have academies to bring people through into the broadcast production process. And the Royal Television Society has a series of masterclasses online as well. So I would hope one way or another that people who are listening this evening and thinking about program making will also consider the opportunities for bringing new voices in, as well as regarding those important reasons why people do watch television in great strength and with great trust, as you.
Same for us too, Helen. I mean, you know, naturally, because we have to, you know, we can't buy off the shelf Irish language stuff all over the world. We you know, by necessity, we need to make an awful lot of our own programming. So, you know, we're very proud of the engagement that we've had, and actually that we've, you know, there's a few different companies that would only work for us around the island as well. So. You know, we take our responsibility also to help the industry out in this country extremely seriously, and we will commission an awful lot of our own programming as the other Indigenous Irish language broadcasters would here too. But you know, particularly true for us.
I think.
Sorry, apologies.
Audrey, please.
I would say that developing new talent is a key strategy for Virgin Media Television. It's something that we have excelled at over the years, even back in our TV3 days. Quite a number of the fresh-faced talent that we would have had around news and current affairs are leading the way in RTE in that field at the moment. We have a Virgin Media Discover short film competition with Screen Ireland, where we encourage people to enter to get represented. So it's something that we're very supportive of. You've got to persevere and keep pushing and entering these competitions and getting noticed.
Yeah,
you'd probably be in the TikTok world. I'm joking, obviously, but I think everybody feels that they're a content maker now on TikTok.
I mean, it's funny. I was on a panel yesterday on a different topic, and there was a girl, I think in 5th year, on the panel, and she had a YouTube channel with 400,000 subscribers, and her most watched video had 76 million views. So we can only aspire to that level of fame. So I suppose just if I could just very briefly on that one, I would say that one thing that we are doing as a broadcaster are investing a lot more in our own content. Traditionally, we would have acquired quite a lot from the US and places like that, but we are investing significantly more in our own content, which I think is just sort of the way of the world now. So I would encourage anybody interested to reach out to commissioning teams, etc. And if I could give one final plug for something which is a little bit different, but on the same topic, but I've just been out giving it plugs in various settings, is we have a program at the moment, particularly for school children. So anybody who has school children, the moment it's called The Edit, and it's particularly around producing news footage, and it's a sort of a free program for all school-going children, where they get an opportunity to do some news editing using sort of both Sky content and Adobe sort of editing suite, and make some sort of news packages on climate change. So if anybody listening has school children, please do check out Sky, The Edit. And
can I have a go?
You did say you were you said you were homeschooling, Dave. So I think it is aimed at teachers, but certainly for those who either have teachers in their household or who have school-going kids, I'd really encourage you to check it out. It's a great program. So apologies for the gratuitous plug to finish.
That's fine. So to close, the appeal is to everybody interested to go to each of the broadcasters' websites to look at the opportunities available. And there will be on TG4, on RTE, on Sky, on Virgin Media Television. And I also would like to put in a plug for TAM Ireland, that has wonderful research on the website and very good and interesting training courses, particularly for people interested in further from what Jill said, and also on the advertising angle into the statistics that TAM has given us. So a closing note of thanks to everybody, just for a moment to thank Jill McGrath, TAM Ireland, Lisa McNulty, Nielsen, Audrey from Virgin Media Television, Audrey Clark, Mark Carpenter, thanks from Sky Ireland. Dave, TG4, thank you too for your research and audience insights. And Paul Lochry, Head of Audience Insights, RTE. And now a final plug for the Royal Television Society, which is an educational charity promoting the art and the science of television. It's a membership organisation, and if you're not a member, and if you're under 30, it will cost £30 sterling. If you're a student, then it's free. And for everybody else, it's really good value. So do join. And thanks on behalf of the Royal Television Society to all our contributors and our attendees this evening. Bye.